Wife cheated with her coworker, then changed the locks of my house while I was gone for one night. When I tried to force myself in, she called police, and claimed that I am a danger to her. Hi everyone, I'm Ben, 35, male. Sharing this is difficult, but I feel like I need to write it down somewhere, to get it out of my head. It all started about 8 months ago, a day that fundamentally altered my life. I came home from a business trip a day early. I'd finished my work sooner than expected and thought I'd surprise my wife, Laura, 33, female. The surprise, unfortunately, was entirely mine, and not in a good way. Our home felt quiet when I walked in. I put my bags down in the hallway and headed towards our study. Laura often worked from home on Fridays. I found her work laptop open on the desk, which was unusual. She was usually very guarded about her work devices, citing client confidentiality. As I got closer, a message notification pinged on the screen. The name Daniel popped up with a preview. Last night was incredible. Can't believe we finally did it. Same place next week? Daniel, 28, male, was a junior team member Laura supervised. My blood ran cold. It was like the floor dropped out from under me. Against my better judgment, a part of me that needed to know, I clicked on the message history. It was a Pandora's box of betrayal. Months and months of messages. It started off seemingly innocently, or so it could be argued, with comments about work projects, then transitioned to flirty office banter, compliments that were too personal. From there, it escalated sharply to explicit descriptions of their meetups, detailed discussions of hotel rooms, specific times, even complaints about close calls where they almost got caught. There were hotel booking confirmations. And then, the photos. Intimate photos of Laura and Daniel. Photos of them in various states of undress, in hotel rooms, even a few selfies that looked like they were taken in our car, the one I usually drove. I felt physically sick. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone as I took pictures of the screen, documenting everything. She may have simply left the laptop open in her haste and arrogance, maybe thinking that I wasn't due back until the next day. Laura and I had been together for 5 years, married for 2. I genuinely thought we had a good, if not perfect, relationship. We had arguments, yes, what couple doesn't? Sometimes Laura had a sharp temper, or could be demanding. For instance, if we were at a restaurant and her order was slightly wrong, she would make a significant scene, not just a simple complaint. I used to think it was her being a perfectionist or having high standards. Looking back, these were red flags of her entitlement I had chosen to ignore or downplay. I never, ever suspected infidelity. Her ambition I admired, her occasional outbursts I tolerated, thinking it was part of her passionate nature. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, the images and words burning into my brain. Then I heard her car pull into the driveway. She came in a few minutes later, humming, then stopped when she saw me. "Ben. You're back early," she said. Her voice was too bright, and her eyes looked surprised, but something else too. I didn't beat around the bush. "Who is Daniel from marketing, Laura?" Her smile faltered. "He's just someone from work. A junior on my team." "Why do you ask?" She tried to sound casual but wouldn't meet my eyes and kept glancing around. "Are you sleeping with him?" I asked, looking straight at her. Laura laughed sharply. "Don't be ridiculous, Ben. Seriously? You're going to accuse me of that just because I work with him? You're being incredibly insecure." She started to walk past me. I held up my phone with a photo of her and Daniel in a hotel bed, smiling for the camera. Her face went pale, then red. "You went through my private work laptop? That's a complete violation of my privacy. How dare you?" She shrieked. "You're having an affair, arranging secret meetings, sending him pictures, and your main concern is your laptop privacy?" I shot back, my own voice getting louder. She didn't deny it then. No point. She just got furious. "So what if I did? What are you going to do about it, Ben?" She spat. "Maybe if you weren't so damn boring and predictable, maybe if you paid more attention to me instead of your stupid hobbies, I wouldn't have to look for excitement elsewhere." Her words stung. She started pacing the study, getting louder with every accusation. I was controlling, neglectful, didn't appreciate her, tried to stifle her career, a whole barrage. Then she saw a porcelain vase on a shelf, a gift from my late aunt that I treasured. Before I could react, she grabbed it and threw it against the wall. "This is your fault," she screamed as it shattered. "Everything is always your fault." I looked at the shattered vase, then at her. Something in me snapped. "Get out," I said, my voice low and angry. "Get out of my house." The house we lived in was mine. I inherited it from my Aunt Carol, filled with her things. Laura knew how much it meant to me. "You can't kick me out," she yelled, her face twisting. "I live here too. This is my home." "Not anymore," I stated. "Pack a bag. I want you gone tonight." She refused. The argument went on for what felt like hours. Her mood was all over the place. 1 minute screaming and calling me names, the next sobbing that Daniel was a mistake, a nobody, then back to blaming me. At one point, while screaming, she grabbed a heavy glass paperweight from the desk. She raised it like she was going to throw it at me or my computer. I flinched and put my hands up. She held it there for a second, then slammed it on the desk hard, right next to her laptop. Then she grabbed a letter opener and made a few quick, shallow scratches on her forearm, drawing blood. "Look what you're making me do," she wailed, holding out her arm. "You're driving me insane." The cuts weren't deep, more for show, but seeing her hurt herself and blame me was really disturbing. I didn't know how to react. I couldn't physically force her out, I wouldn't. Exhausted, angry, and honestly a little scared of what she might do next, I told her I was going to stay at my friend Sam's place for the night. I needed space to think, to process, and for things to cool down. I told her that when I came back the next day, I expected her to have a plan to move out, or to have already left. That was a colossal mistake. Walking out that night, leaving her in my house, was the worst thing I could have done. I spent a sleepless night on Sam's couch. Sam listened, offered support, and agreed Laura's behavior was beyond the pale. The next afternoon, around 3 p.m., I drove back to the house, with Sam accompanying me for moral support and as a witness. My key slid into the lock, but it wouldn't turn. I tried again. Nothing. She had changed the locks. I couldn't believe the audacity. I hammered on the door, shouting her name. After several long minutes, Laura opened the door, just a crack, a chain still on. She had a smug, almost triumphant look on her face. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Let me in, Laura. This is my house. You know that." "Not according to my lawyer," she said coolly, holding up a piece of paper through the crack. I could see some kind of legal letterhead. "I've filed for an emergency order of protection and established residency. You left, Ben. You abandoned the marital home. I'm staying. And you can't come near me." I was utterly stunned. In less than 24 hours, she had not only changed the locks but had already consulted a lawyer and was actively trying to usurp my property and paint me as a threat. Sam tried to reason with her, saying this was insane, but she just smirked and slammed the door shut. A few minutes later, as Sam and I were standing on the sidewalk, discussing what to do next, a police car pulled up. Laura had called them. She had told them I was trying to break in, that I had threatened her previously, a complete lie, and that she feared for her safety. The two officers listened to my side of the story, then to hers, shouted through the closed door. They were civil but made it clear that since she was legally my wife, had established residency, however manipulatively, and had made a claim of fearing me, they could not force her to leave, nor could they allow me entry if she objected. Forcing the issue, they warned, could lead to my arrest for domestic disturbance or attempted forced entry. One officer actually said, "Sir, for your own good, it's better if you leave the premises. Get a lawyer. Handle this through the courts." I was being escorted away from my own property, under suspicion, while the woman who had cheated on me, destroyed my belongings, and was now making false accusations, watched from the window. The first thing I did was call a lawyer specializing in divorces. I explained the situation. My lawyer was blunt. He said it was going to be a tough, ugly fight, especially given Laura's immediate aggression and manipulative tactics. He warned that she would try to claim as much as possible, and that proving the house was entirely separate property, despite it being an inheritance, would require documentation. He also said her claims of abuse, even if false, would complicate matters. So that's where I am currently. I am still in talks with the lawyer and don't know what to do. I am so confused. Reddit, what would you do if you were me? Update 1. Hello again, everyone. The outpouring of messages and support after my initial post was unexpected and genuinely helpful. It's a strange comfort to know I'm not entirely alone in navigating this kind of personal hell. Many of you shared similar experiences or offered advice, which I've taken to heart. I spoke at length with my older sister, Clara. She's a corporate lawyer, so not exactly her field, but she's sharp as a tack and fiercely protective. She's known Laura since I started dating her and admitted she'd always found Laura a bit high maintenance and self-centered, but she never imagined this level of cruelty. Clara recalled a dinner party at my place about a year ago where Laura had berated a guest for accidentally spilling a drop of wine on a new rug, making the atmosphere incredibly tense for everyone. At the time, Clara had pulled me aside and said Laura needed to dial it down, but I defended Laura, saying she was just stressed from work. Clara now says she wishes she'd been more forceful back then. Clara has been an absolute rock. She immediately offered to vet any lawyer I chose and to review all documents and legal strategies. Her legal mind, even outside family law, has been invaluable. Ben, she told me, Laura is executing a classic destructive personality playbook. The sudden rage, the victim playing, the immediate escalation to legal threats, changing locks, the false accusations to the police, the self-harm threat, these are all tactics. They are designed to destabilize you, make you doubt yourself, and seize control of the narrative and assets. Do not let her win by reacting emotionally. Stick to facts, document everything, and let the legal process work. Hearing her frame it so clinically helped me detach a little and see Laura's actions not as random explosions, but as deliberate, manipulative moves. The pressure from other quarters, particularly Laura's family, has been relentless and utterly infuriating. Laura's parents, Eleanor and George, called me multiple times. Their approach was astonishing. Eleanor, Laura's mother, did most of the talking. She launched into a lecture about how all marriages face challenges and that I, as the man, should be more understanding and forgiving of Laura's passionate and sometimes impulsive nature. She actually tried to suggest that Daniel, the affair partner, was probably just starstruck by Laura and that Laura, in her senior position, might have been mentoring him a bit too closely, perhaps blurring a line unintentionally. The way she tried to sanitize and minimize a months-long, deeply deceptive affair was breathtaking. Eleanor then had the gall to say, "Ben, darling, Laura is a very sensitive girl. You walking out like that, even for a night, must have terrified her. It pushed her to the edge. She needs stability, and you know how much she loves that house. It's her sanctuary too. You should really consider letting her stay there while you two work things out. Forgive and forget. It's the Christian thing to do, isn't it?" When I interjected, and told her about Laura smashing my aunt's irreplaceable vase and then superficially cutting her arm while blaming me, Eleanor just sighed dramatically. "Oh, she's always been a bit theatrical. She gets that from her dear father's side, you know. A flair for the dramatic. Don't take it so seriously. She was probably just overwrought and didn't mean any harm by it. Those things can be replaced, but a marriage is precious." George, Laura's father, who is usually quiet and lets Eleanor lead, mumbled his agreement. He added that Laura was exceptionally fragile at the moment and that I needed to be the bigger man and show compassion. Their only concern was for Laura's comfort, her desires, and maintaining her version of reality. It was crystal clear where Laura had cultivated her sense of entitlement and her belief that she was never accountable for her actions. They even hinted that if I made things difficult, it could get unpleasant for everyone, which I took as a veiled threat, possibly financial or legal, given their past behavior of bailing Laura out. Laura herself has been a whirlwind of chaotic communication since being served with divorce papers and the official notice to vacate, which her lawyer is, of course, fighting. Since I blocked her main phone number, she's been using burner apps and new SIM cards to call and text me. The voicemails she leaves are a disturbing cocktail. They swing wildly from tearful, almost pathetic apologies, where she sobs about making a terrible, terrible mistake and how Daniel meant nothing, to declarations of undying love and how we were soulmates meant to overcome this. Then, often in the very next message, or even within the same one, her tone will shift to cold fury. She'll scream profanities, threaten to ruin my career, tell me I'll never get the house, that she'll fight me with every breath, and that she'll make sure everyone knows what an abusive monster I am. Her harassment extended beyond phone calls. She showed up at Sam's apartment building one evening, well after 10 p.m. Sam lives in a secure building, but she somehow managed to tailgate another resident through the main door. She then started banging on Sam's apartment door, screaming my name, demanding I come out and face her like a man. Sam, who is a good friend but not confrontational, was quite shaken. He called me as I was outside, and I told him to call building security immediately. Security escorted a hysterical and shouting Laura from the premises. Sam said she looked completely unhinged. She was screaming that I was holding her emotional support documents hostage inside Sam's apartment. The smear campaign has intensified. Sarah, a mutual acquaintance, more hers than mine, called me, ostensibly to offer sympathy, but it quickly became clear she was fishing for information for Laura. Sarah relayed that Laura has been telling everyone that I was secretly seeing someone else for months, that I was cruel and emotionally withdrawn, and that her brief indiscretion with Daniel was a desperate cry for help because I was so neglectful and abusive. She's painting herself as the tragic victim of a cold, heartless husband. This narrative is gaining traction with people who don't know me well or who are easily swayed by her dramatic performances. The most alarming incident occurred last week, directly related to the house. I had to retrieve essential personal documents, my work computer, and some vital medication. My lawyer arranged for a court-approved civil standby, meaning 2 police officers had to be present to ensure peace during my brief visit. Laura was, of course, present. The moment she saw me walk in behind the officers, she launched into a full-blown meltdown. She clutched her stomach dramatically, stumbled, and then collapsed onto the living room floor, wailing at the top of her lungs. She started screaming that she was pregnant with my child and that the stress I was putting her through was causing her to have a miscarriage right there and then. I was utterly dumbfounded. We hadn't been intimate for several months, well before I discovered the affair. There was no possibility she was pregnant by me. The police officers looked extremely uncomfortable, unsure how to handle the situation. One of them, a younger female officer, cautiously asked Laura if she needed an ambulance or medical attention. Suddenly, Laura's agonizing pain seemed to subside slightly. She made a show of bravely trying to sit up, waved a weak hand, and said she'd be fine, but then she fixed me with a venomous glare and said, loud enough for the officers to hear clearly, "He doesn't care about our baby. He probably wants this to happen." It was a grotesque lie, transparently designed to shock, manipulate, and discredit me in front of the police. After I gathered my essential items, as I was walking out the door, she whispered, her voice low and menacing, "You'll pay for this, Ben. I'll make sure you lose everything, you bastard." Both police officers heard her threat and made a note of it in their report, which my lawyer said was helpful. Clara's advice remains consistent: stay utterly disengaged from Laura directly. All communication must go through lawyers. Document every single interaction, every threat, every voicemail, every third-party report of her behavior. This escalating pattern of harassment, defamation, and blatant manipulation in front of law enforcement will be crucial in court, she said. It demonstrates her instability and her contempt for due process. It's an incredibly difficult path. Every day feels like navigating a psychological war zone, never knowing what new form of attack Laura will launch. The woman I married is not just gone, she's been replaced by a vindictive, erratic stranger who seems determined to destroy me. Update 2, hi all. I've had some requests for more specific details on how Laura managed to conduct her affair with Daniel for so long and a deeper dive into her family background and past behaviors, which, in hindsight, were significant red flags. Piecing this together has been like assembling a very ugly mosaic. Regarding the mechanics of the affair, Laura was bolder and more reckless than I could have ever imagined, likely fueled by her arrogance and her belief in her own untouchability. Daniel, her subordinate, was apparently quite infatuated, and also naive. From the extensive message history on her laptop, and later corroborated by a very reluctant former colleague of Laura's, who eventually came forward to my lawyer with information, ridden with guilt for staying silent, Laura leveraged her position of authority over Daniel quite directly. She initiated most of their illicit interactions, often framing them as after-hours strategy sessions or informal team building. Daniel was relatively new to the company and the city, making him more susceptible to her influence. Her former colleague mentioned that Laura would assign Daniel to projects that required them to work late together, then suggest they grab a quick drink to unwind, which would then lead to more. Their clandestine meetups were shockingly frequent, at least twice a week for several months. They favored a particular mid-range hotel chain, choosing locations near their office but occasionally venturing further out. Laura, it turned out, had opened a separate credit card account in her own name, mailed to her office, which she used exclusively for the hotel rooms and gifts for Daniel. I was completely unaware of this account. Her excuses to me for her absences were varied: late nights at the office due to pressing deadlines, mandatory networking events, team dinners I wasn't invited to because they were strictly work people. The colleague recounted that Daniel, in his infatuation or perhaps his own arrogance, would sometimes make veiled boasts to other junior staff about his special connection with a senior manager. Some people in the office apparently suspected something inappropriate was occurring, but Laura had a reputation for a volatile temper and for holding grudges, so no one dared to confront her or report it. Her brazenness extended to company resources. She took Daniel on what she claimed was a crucial client acquisition trip to a nearby city for a weekend. In reality, it was a romantic getaway. She expensed a significant portion of it: meals, a rental car, claiming hers was in the shop, and even some client entertainment, which was actually tickets to a concert for her and Daniel, directly to the company. This level of recklessness eventually played a part in her dismissal from her job. After I filed for divorce and news of the affair and her generally erratic behavior started to circulate, partly due to her own public outbursts and partly through the corporate grapevine, her company launched an internal investigation. She was fired for gross misconduct and misuse of company funds. Naturally, she blamed me entirely for sabotaging her career by spreading vicious lies. Now, regarding Laura's family and her background. Her parents, Eleanor and George, are the architects of her entitlement. Laura is their only child, and from what I've observed and what Clara has also noted over the years, she was raised in an environment where she was the center of their universe, rarely denied anything, and never truly held accountable for her negative actions. If Laura threw a tantrum as a child, or even as an adult, she usually got her way. If she failed an exam, it was the teacher's fault for not explaining things properly. If she lost a game, the rules were unfair or the opponent cheated. They are comfortably upper middle class, not fabulously wealthy, but they possess enough resources and a certain social standing to smooth over any significant problems Laura encountered. A stark example of this, which Eleanor once recounted to me with a strange sort of pride, as an example of Laura's spiritedness, was when Laura was in her first year of university. She was caught red-handed plagiarizing a significant term paper. The evidence was irrefutable, and she faced expulsion. Instead of Laura facing the consequences, Eleanor and George immediately hired a prominent lawyer who specialized in educational disputes. They threatened the university with a protracted and damaging lawsuit, alleging everything from instructor bias to procedural unfairness. The university, likely wanting to avoid negative publicity and costly litigation, eventually allowed Laura to withdraw from the course without academic penalty, and the plagiarism charge was quietly expunged from her record. This taught Laura a powerful lesson: rules are for other people, and if you, or your parents, make enough noise or threaten enough trouble, you can get away with almost anything. During our marriage, even before the affair came to light, our arguments often followed a disturbing pattern. Laura rarely engaged in rational discussion when she felt criticized or thwarted. Instead, she would resort to extreme emotional tactics. The silent treatment for days on end was a common one. Sometimes, she would accuse me of not loving her, of being cold or unfeeling, and then threaten to leave me, packing a bag dramatically, only to allow herself to be convinced to stay after hours of my pleading and reassurance. There were several occasions, during particularly heated arguments often about minor issues, like my wanting a quiet weekend when she wanted to go out, where she would escalate to behaviors like hyperventilating until she nearly passed out, or lightly but repeatedly banging her head against a wall or doorframe, crying out that I was driving her crazy or making her ill. At the time, I was genuinely worried about her. I would back down immediately, apologize even when I felt I'd done nothing wrong, and focus all my energy on soothing her. Now, I see these episodes with chilling clarity. They weren't signs of genuine distress, but calculated manipulative displays, early warning signs of the profoundly unstable and explosive behavior I am grappling with now. Her sense of ownership is absolute, extending not just to material possessions but to people. In her mind, I was not her partner, but her possession. The house, despite its clear legal status as my inheritance, became her house the moment she moved in. The affair, I now believe, wasn't just about a fleeting search for excitement, it was about power and control. Power over Daniel, her subordinate, whom she could command and manipulate, and power over me, by maintaining this elaborate secret life, by deceiving me so thoroughly. The idea that I would dare to challenge her authority, expose her deceit, or attempt to remove her from her house is an intolerable affront to her entire worldview. Her family's unwavering, uncritical support, even after learning the full extent of her affair and her subsequent actions, only serves to reinforce her deeply entrenched belief that she is the injured party and that I am the one acting unreasonably and cruelly. They consistently validate her narrative, telling her that I am the problem, that I am vindictive, and that she must fight tooth and nail for what's rightfully hers. This toxic echo chamber makes any rational negotiation or amicable resolution utterly impossible. Update 3. Hi everyone. It's been an incredibly long and draining haul since my last update, nearly a full year filled with legal wrangling, emotional turmoil, and constant stress. But I can finally report that this chapter is, for the most part, closed. The court proceedings were every bit as contentious and ugly as my lawyer had predicted. Laura and her legal team employed a strategy of aggressive offense, attempting to paint me as a vindictive, controlling, and even abusive husband. Laura herself took the stand and, under her lawyer's careful guidance, delivered a tearful, Oscar-worthy performance. She testified that I was emotionally distant and financially controlling, despite bank records showing she had her own significant income and access to joint funds which she spent lavishly. She claimed my discovery of her close friendship with Daniel was merely a pretext I manufactured to try and remove her from the marital home because I secretly wanted to sell it for a huge profit and cut her out. She even alleged that she had invested a substantial amount of her own premarital savings into the upkeep and improvement of the house, a claim for which she could produce no credible evidence and which our forensic accountant easily disproved. My lawyer systematically dismantled these fabrications with bank statements, emails, and testimonies from individuals like Sam, who had witnessed Laura's spending habits and her treatment of me, and even my sister Clara, who testified about Laura's general demeanor and past instances of financial irresponsibility. Laura's ludicrous pregnancy claim, which she had dramatically announced during my police-escorted visit to retrieve my belongings, was swiftly and embarrassingly exposed as a lie in the pretrial discovery phase. My lawyer had, quite reasonably, requested medical proof, doctor's visits, ultrasound reports, anything. Laura, of course, could provide nothing. Her lawyer then feebly attempted to argue it was a pseudocyesis or hysterical pregnancy, brought on by the immense stress I had allegedly inflicted upon her. The judge, was visibly unimpressed by this explanation. This particular stunt significantly undermined Laura's credibility from the outset. There were numerous instances of Laura's characteristic courtroom theatrics. During one session, as my lawyer was calmly presenting documented evidence of her extravagant spending on Daniel, hotel bills from her secret credit card, receipts for expensive gifts, flight confirmations for their business trip, Laura suddenly leapt to her feet, shouting, "He's twisting everything. He's a liar. I'm the victim here, can't you see?" She actually tried to approach the judge's bench before being sharply called to order by the bailiff and admonished by the judge. On another occasion, when Daniel was subpoenaed by my lawyer to testify, he appeared extremely reluctant and visibly nervous but was legally compelled. Laura couldn't contain herself. As Daniel, under oath, began to confirm the details of the affair, admitting Laura's initiation and active pursuit of it, and her subsequent threats to him to maintain his silence, Laura stood up and screamed across the courtroom, calling him a pathetic, lying traitor and a spineless coward. This outburst led to her being formally warned by the judge that another such display would see her removed from the courtroom. The battle over my aunt's house was, as expected, the most vicious part of the proceedings. My aunt's will was crystal clear, and the property deed unequivocally listed me as the sole inheritor prior to our marriage. However, Laura's lawyer aggressively argued for a significant portion of its current market value, citing marital asset claims based on the duration of our marriage and her supposed non-financial contributions and sweat equity in maintaining and improving the property. We had to engage forensic accountants to meticulously trace every penny related to the house, proving that all mortgage payments, the mortgage was very small and nearly paid off when I inherited it, and I cleared the remainder with premarital funds, property taxes, insurance, and any significant upkeep or improvements came directly from my premarital savings or my sole, traceable income. Laura had contributed virtually nothing financially to the house itself. A significant turning point, I believe, came during the depositions of Laura's parents, Eleanor and George. While they both attempted to steadfastly support Laura's narrative of victimhood and my supposed cruelty, my lawyer's precise and relentless questioning exposed numerous inconsistencies in their stories and highlighted their long-standing pattern of enabling Laura's behavior and shielding her from consequences. Eleanor became increasingly flustered, defensive, and even aggressive under cross-examination, at one point accusing my lawyer of bullying her. George mostly appeared uncomfortable and defeated, often deferring to Eleanor or claiming not to recall specific incidents. Their combined testimony, intended to bolster Laura's case, likely did more harm than good by painting a clear picture of a dysfunctional family dynamic rooted in entitlement. After their depositions, there was a noticeable shift in the demeanor of Laura's lawyer. He became slightly more subdued, perhaps recognizing the weakness of their overall position. Finally, a few weeks ago, after months of hearings, submissions, and delays, many initiated by Laura's side, the judge issued the final ruling. The divorce was granted on the grounds of irreconcilable differences, with a specific finding of Laura's infidelity being a contributing factor to the marital breakdown. Crucially, the house was confirmed as my sole and separate property, with no equity or financial interest awarded to Laura. This was an immense victory and a profound relief. In his summary, the judge made note of Laura's egregious conduct throughout the proceedings, including her false allegations, her attempts to manipulate the court, citing the pregnancy claim specifically, and her courtroom outbursts, stating these behaviors reflected poorly on her credibility. Laura was formally ordered to vacate the property within 30 days. The day Laura moved out was incredibly tense. Following my lawyer's advice, I arranged for a civil standby, so 2 police officers were present to prevent any further incidents. Laura was sullen, radiating hostility. She didn't speak to me directly. She made a point of dragging out the process for the entire allotted time, moving with excruciating slowness. There was some minor, clearly vindictive, damage discovered after she left, several deep, deliberate scratches on the hardwood floor in the master bedroom, a bizarre and crude scribble in permanent marker on a section of wall hidden behind a bookshelf in the study, and a few small, sentimental items of mine were missing, nothing of significant monetary value, but personally meaningful. It wasn't substantial enough to warrant further legal action, but it was her final, petty signature on this destructive chapter of my life. As she was directed to leave by the officers, she didn't look at me, but she said to one of the officers, her voice carrying clearly, "He'll regret this. People like him always get what's coming to them in the end." The officer simply nodded curtly and ensured she departed the premises. The financial settlement was the only part that left a bitter taste, though it was far less than Laura had demanded. Because she had been fired from her job, a direct consequence of her affair and related misconduct becoming known, and successfully argued that she currently had no means of support, the court ordered me to pay temporary spousal support. It's a modest amount, and for a strictly limited period, 18 months. My lawyer explained that such awards are fairly standard in our jurisdiction to allow a non-earning or significantly lower earning spouse a transitional period to secure employment and become self-sufficient, irrespective of their conduct during the marriage, unless it involved criminal financial fraud against the spouse. It stings to write those checks each month, knowing where the money is going after everything she put me through, but it's a small price to pay for my freedom and peace of mind. I am methodically counting down the days until those payments cease. I've started the slow, arduous process of reclaiming my home and, more importantly, my life. The first act was to hire a locksmith to install new, high-security locks on all the doors. The house feels eerily quiet now, but it's a peaceful quiet. The relationship didn't just deteriorate, it catastrophically imploded, consumed by Laura's destructive choices and her absolute refusal to accept responsibility for any of her actions. Thank you, once again, to everyone who has followed this story and offered words of support and encouragement. It's been one of the darkest and most challenging periods of my life, but I'm through it. That chapter is finally, definitively, closed.